The shadow's final test, a chosen one's reckoning with destiny. You sit here at 11:11 p.m. on the final day of January, and you believe this is coincidence. You tell yourself that the pull you feel, this inexplicable gravity drawing you toward these words, is merely curiosity, perhaps even algorithmic manipulation. But the collective unconscious does not operate through accidents. When you encounter a message that reverberates in the deepest chambers of your soul, when your chest tightens and your breath shallows, when tears form without logical cause, you are not experiencing random neurological firing. You are experiencing recognition. The self, that transcendent totality within you that Jung spent his lifetime mapping, is stirring from its long slumber, and it has orchestrated this precise moment of convergence. The burden you carry as a chosen one in contemporary American society is unlike anything our ancestors faced. They had tribes, rituals, rites of passage that acknowledged the soul's journey. You have strip malls, social media algorithms, and a culture that pathologizes depth as depression. When you were young and spoke of your visions, your knowing, your inexplicable awareness of energies others couldn't perceive, you learned quickly to silence yourself. The psyche records every moment of rejection, every time you dimmed your light to fit into fluorescent-lit conformity. These moments crystallize into what Jung called complexes, autonomous fragments of the unconscious that hijack your behavior, whispering that you are too much or not enough, never simply allowed to be. The isolation you feel is not social awkwardness. It is the natural consequence of operating at a frequency that most have not yet accessed. This is why I mapped out a practical framework in the 3 keys to a prosperous life, because I witnessed countless old souls spiraling into guilt about their gifts, sabotaging their abundance, convinced that their sensitivity made them weak rather than powerful. That trilogy, the ebook and audiobook version available in the description below, addresses the specific shadow work required for empaths who have been taught that prosperity and spirituality are incompatible. It is not a sales pitch. It is a survival manual for those undergoing the individuation process in a world hostile to depth. But let us return to the urgency you feel. This sensation that time is collapsing, that you must act now or lose everything. This is not anxiety. This is the psyche's emergency broadcast system. The unconscious mind does not possess linear time. It experiences past, present, and future as simultaneous layers. When you sense a deadline, you are tapping into what quantum physicists would call probability collapse, the moment when infinite potential narrows into actualized reality. Jung understood this through synchronicity. Those are causal connecting principles where inner psychic states correspond with outer physical events. The number 11, the repeating angel numbers, the song lyrics that answer your unspoken questions, these are not signs from external beings. They are proof that your unconscious is communicating through the language of symbols, attempting to guide you toward the integration you have been avoiding, the architecture of divine urgency. Understanding the psyche's crisis mechanism, when Archangel Michael appears in your mind's eye with his flaming sword raised, when you hear Jesus whispering your name with sorrowful urgency, you must understand the psychological infrastructure supporting these visions. Michael represents what Jung termed the divine masculine principle, the discriminating consciousness that separates wheat from chaff, truth from illusion, authentic self from conditioned persona. His sword is not a weapon of violence, it is the sharp edge of awareness that cuts through the fog of ego defense mechanisms. Every time you have compromised your truth to maintain peace, every moment you swallowed your words to avoid conflict, every instance you chose comfort over calling, these choices accumulate as psychic debt. Michael's appearance signals that this debt has reached critical mass. The sword must fall, and what dies is not you, but the false constructs you have mistaken for identity. Jesus, in contrast, embodies the divine feminine principle of sacrificial love and redemptive suffering. Notice how he appears not in glory but in sorrow, not commanding but beckoning. This is the anima for male-identified souls, or the integrated animus for female-identified souls, attempting to reunite the fragmented aspects of your being through compassion. The Christian mythos, when understood symbolically rather than literally, offers a profound map of individuation, the descent into matter, incarnation, the betrayal by those closest, shadow projection, the crucifixion, ego death, the descent into hell confronting the unconscious, and resurrection, rebirth as the integrated self. When Jesus calls your name, he is not asking you to join a religion. He is the archetype of the self, reminding you that transformation requires sacrifice, not of others, but of the parts of yourself that no longer serve your evolution. The 10-second window operates on the principle of psychological momentum. The unconscious mind, when it finally breaks through the ego's defenses, creates a narrow portal of maximum receptivity. In those moments, your entire being is aligned. Conscious mind, unconscious drives, emotional body, physical presence. This state of coherence is rare and fleeting. It requires tremendous energy for the psyche to generate, which is why it cannot maintain indefinitely. Think of it as a lunar eclipse. The shadow and light align perfectly for a brief window, and if you are not positioned to observe, the opportunity passes. The psyche will offer other windows, yes, but each missed opportunity requires exponentially more energy to recreate. Eventually, the unconscious exhausts itself, and what could have been graceful transformation becomes forced crisis, the midlife breakdown, the health collapse, the relationship implosion that finally forces you to confront what you have been avoiding. The concept of enemies gathering while you wait is particularly crucial to decode. From a Jungian perspective, these enemies are not external agents of darkness. They are projections, aspects of your shadow that you have disowned and externalized. When you fail to claim your power, your repressed aggression, your healthy selfishness, these qualities do not disappear. They congeal into autonomous complexes that you then perceive as attacking you from outside. The narcissists who drain you, the systems that oppress you, the bad luck that seems to follow, all contain fragments of your own unintegrated psyche. This is not victim blaming, it is liberation. Because if the enemy is within, then so is the solution. Integration of the shadow does not mean becoming cruel or selfish. It means acknowledging that you contain the capacity for these qualities, choosing consciously when to deploy them, and thus neutralizing their unconscious control over you. The 3 seals, psychological thresholds of awakening. The first seal, placed at birth, represents what Jung called the original self. The wholeness you possessed before socialization fractured you into acceptable pieces. Infants are born without shame, without the sense of separation between self and world. They cry when they need, laugh when they delight, rage when frustrated. They are pure, undifferentiated consciousness. Then comes the family system, the cultural conditioning, the gradual imprisonment into what is appropriate. Your parents, despite their love, were likely unindividuated themselves. They projected their unlived lives onto you, their fears and hopes shaping your self-concept. If your mother was an artist who sacrificed her creativity for stability, you may carry an unconscious prohibition against creative risk. If your father was shamed for showing emotion, you may have internalized the belief that vulnerability equals weakness. This first seal contains your daimon, that unique genius or calling that selected this particular body, this family system, this historical moment as the optimal conditions for its expression. But here is the shadow aspect that few discuss. Your daimon may have chosen a difficult incarnation precisely because struggle accelerates growth. If you were born into trauma, instability, or lack, it was not cosmic punishment. It was the soul's calculated decision that these conditions would forge the specific strengths required for your mission. The chosen one archetype is not about being superior. It is about being specialized. You were sculpted for a particular task that requires the exact combination of wounds, gifts, and circumstances you possess. The first seal breaks when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can only I do because of who I have become?" The resistance to this breaking is immense because it requires you to stop identifying as a victim. American culture, particularly in the age of social media, has created sophisticated incentives for victimhood. Victimhood grants moral authority, community belonging, and relief from responsibility. If your suffering is someone else's fault, you are absolved from the terrifying work of self-creation. But the chosen one path demands that you relinquish this comfort. You must claim radical responsibility, not for what was done to you, but for what you will do with what was done to you. This is the alchemical work, transmuting lead, trauma, into gold, wisdom, power, purpose. The first seal breaking feels like betraying your wounded self, like abandoning the child within who still weeps for justice. But that child does not need rescue. That child needs integration. You must become the parent you never had, and that requires you to grow up, even when no one taught you how. The second seal, placed during your darkest moment, contains what Jung called the redemption of the shadow. Every spiritual tradition recognizes the necessity of the dark night of the soul, that period of total disintegration where everything you believed about yourself, God, and reality collapses. For some, it manifests as depression so profound that getting out of bed becomes heroic. For others, it is the sudden loss of relationship, health, or livelihood that strips away all external validation. For you, reading this, it was likely that specific moment when you realized you could not continue living the lie. Maybe it was staring at your reflection and not recognizing the hollow-eyed stranger gazing back. Maybe it was the moment you understood that the career you built, the relationship you maintained, the identity you projected, none of it was actually you. The shadow material sealed during this crisis contains your greatest power precisely because it contains your deepest shame. What did you do during your darkest hour that you have never fully forgiven yourself for? What did you think, feel, or want that contradicts your self-concept as a good person? Here lives your rage at God, your desire for revenge, your jealousy of those who seem to suffer less, your moments of cruelty or cowardice. The ego's strategy is repression. Push these memories into the unconscious, pretend they never happened, construct an idealized self-image to compensate. But Jung discovered that what we resist persists and amplifies. The repressed shadow does not fade. It festers, eventually erupting as projection, addiction, psychosomatic illness, or self-sabotage. The restoration promised by the second seal's breaking is not about receiving external compensation for your suffering. It is not the universe paying you back. It is the reclamation of psychic energy that has been locked in maintaining the repression. Imagine you are a factory, and 70% of your power supply is devoted to keeping the basement door locked, terrified of what might escape. When you finally descend into that basement, confront the monster and realize it is simply a wounded part of yourself that needed acknowledgement. Suddenly that 70% becomes available for creation, connection, joy, purpose. This is why integrated individuals seem to operate with supernatural levels of energy. They are not superhuman. They have simply stopped wasting energy on internal warfare. But the breaking of the second seal requires you to feel what you have spent years avoiding. You must grieve the innocence lost, the time wasted, the opportunities missed. You must rage at the injustice of your circumstances without spiritual bypassing into everything happens for a reason. You must sit with the shame of your choices without rushing to forgiveness or self-compassion. This is the descent into the underworld that precedes resurrection. The American therapeutic culture often tries to shortcut this process with techniques, affirmations, or pharmaceutical intervention. These have their place, but they cannot replace the organic timeline of the soul's dark work. There are no shortcuts through the underworld. There is only the willingness to stay conscious while you traverse it. The third seal, enantiodromia and the collapse of linear time. The third seal operates on a principle that modern psychology struggles to articulate, but Jung understood intuitively. Enantiodromia, the conversion of something into its opposite through excessive one-sidedness. When you have suffered long enough, resisted deeply enough, and finally surrendered completely enough, the psyche initiates a reversal. What was blocked becomes fluid. What was chaotic becomes ordered. What required years of struggle suddenly resolves in days or even hours. This is not divine intervention. It is the natural consequence of removing internal contradiction. Your life up until this point has likely been characterized by pushing to prove yourself, pushing to overcome obstacles, pushing to make things happen through sheer force of will. This is the ego's strategy, rooted in the wound of not being enough. But the ego, no matter how strong, cannot outperform the unconscious. It is a tiny island of awareness, floating on an ocean of unknown forces. When the ego finally exhausts itself, when you reach the point of, "I cannot do this anymore," the unconscious steps forward. This is grace, but not the religious kind. This is psychological grace, the moment when you stop blocking the natural intelligence that has been trying to guide you all along. The acceleration promised by the third seal manifests as synchronicities that seem statistically impossible. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they call within hours. You need a specific resource, and it appears without you seeking it. You face a decision, and the answer arrives through a song, a conversation overheard, a book that falls off the shelf. Skeptics dismiss these as confirmation bias or coincidence. But Jung spent decades documenting these phenomena, recognizing them as evidence of the psychoid, the realm where psyche and matter intersect, where inner and outer reality reveal themselves as two aspects of a unified field. But here is the shadow side that the manifestation industrial complex does not address. Acceleration brings increased responsibility. When your prayers are answered, when your intentions manifest, when your life begins moving at synchronistic speed, you must be prepared for the consequences. The ego thinks it wants power, success, visibility, love. But these gifts come with shadows, the envy of others, the weight of expectations, the loss of anonymity, the necessity of maintaining what you have attracted. Many chosen ones self-sabotage precisely at the threshold of breakthrough because unconsciously they recognize they are not yet equipped to handle the consequences of their own prayers being answered. This is why the 72-hour window following the seal breaking is so critical. This is the temenos, the sacred container where the new self gestates. During this period, you are in a liminal state, no longer who you were, not yet who you are becoming. You are psychologically permeable, vulnerable to both higher guidance and regressive impulses. The first sign you receive, and you will receive one, is the unconscious confirming that you are on the path. It will be unmistakable, personal, and often absurd in its specificity. Do not dismiss it as coincidence. Document it, honor it. Let it anchor you in the reality that the work you are doing is not delusional. It is the most real thing you have ever undertaken. The fourth element, the divine magnet, is what Jung called the constellation of the self. When your individual consciousness begins operating in alignment with the archetypal wholeness that transcends the personal ego. At this stage, you no longer chase opportunities, relationships, or success. You become a field of coherent energy, and the universe responds by sending you what matches your vibration. This is not metaphysical wishful thinking. This is recognizable in psychological terms. When you are no longer broadcasting mixed signals, when your words match your thoughts, your actions match your values, your public persona matches your private self, you become trustworthy to both your own unconscious and to the unconscious of others. People will begin telling you, "I don't know why I'm sharing this with you," or "I've never told anyone this before." You are not becoming a therapist, you are becoming authentic, and authenticity creates permission for others to do the same. This is how chosen ones serve, not through preaching or saving, but through presence. You become living evidence that integration is possible, that the journey through darkness leads to light, that the soul's demands, though terrifying, are worth honoring. The shadow's resistance. Why the ego sabotages at the threshold. Now we must address the darkest aspect of this journey, the part that few spiritual teachers acknowledge because it threatens the fantasy of a smooth ascension. Your own psyche will attempt to destroy this process. Not because you are broken or cursed, but because transformation requires ego death, and the ego's prime directive is survival. When I speak of spiritual warfare, I am not referring to demons or dark entities. I'm speaking of the internal battle between the part of you that craves evolution and the part of you that craves safety. Your ego has kept you alive. It has navigated trauma, built protective strategies, and constructed an identity that functions in the world. To that ego, individuation is suicide. It perceives the call to wholeness as a threat to its existence, which, in a sense, it is. The old self must die for the new self to emerge. This is why, in the days following profound spiritual experiences, you may find yourself inexplicably sabotaging. You pick a fight with your partner. You miss the important meeting. You revert to the addiction you thought you had conquered. You convince yourself this was all delusion and return to the familiar hell of your old patterns. This regression is so common that Jung gave it a name, the restoration of the persona. After the ego shatters and truth floods in, there is often a reflexive attempt to rebuild the mask, to pretend the glimpse into the unconscious never happened. The ego recruits your rational mind, which generates endless justifications. I was just emotional. I got caught up in spiritual bypassing. This is narcissistic delusion. Meanwhile, your body holds the truth. The racing heart, the tight throat, the tears that come without permission. The body never lies, but the mind is a masterful deceiver. The specific ways your ego will sabotage depend on your shadow structure. If your core wound is unworthiness, you will suddenly become convinced you do not deserve the breakthrough. If your wound is abandonment, you will preemptively reject the help being offered to avoid the pain of future loss. If your wound is invisibility, you will sabotage the very success you have prayed for because visibility triggers your deepest terror. These are not character flaws. These are the intricate defense mechanisms of a psyche that adapted to survive unbearable circumstances. Compassion is required, but not indulgence. You must recognize the sabotage for what it is and proceed anyway. One of the most insidious forms of resistance is what I call spiritual materialism. The ego's attempt to co-opt the individuation process and turn it into another achievement. You begin collecting certifications, reading every book, adopting spiritual practices, but you never actually descend into the shadow. You perform awakening while avoiding transformation. You speak the language of higher consciousness while your behavior remains unchanged. This is the ego wearing a spiritual costume, and it is harder to detect than outright sabotage because it looks like progress. The test of authentic individuation is simple. Is your life changing? Are your relationships deepening or ending? Are you making choices that terrify you but feel aligned? Are you losing things, people, beliefs, identities that no longer resonate? Transformation is not subtle, it is volcanic. If your spiritual journey feels comfortable, if it confirms what you already believe, if it requires nothing of you but intellectual understanding, you are still in the ego's domain. The self demands everything. It burns what is false until only truth remains. Synchronicity as the language of the awakened psyche. Let us now examine the mechanics of how the unconscious communicates during this accelerated phase. You have likely noticed the numbers 11, 11, 3, 33, 5, 55, appearing with such frequency that statistical probability becomes absurd. You have experienced thinking of someone and having them contact you immediately. You have encountered the same symbols, phrases, or themes across multiple unrelated sources. These are not messages from angels or spirits, though you may interpret them that way. These are manifestations of synchronicity, Jung's term for meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by causality. Synchronicity operates on the principle that psyche and matter are not separate domains, but two aspects of a unified reality. When your internal state reaches a certain intensity or coherence, it begins affecting the probability field around you. Quantum physicists would describe this as observer effect, consciousness influencing the behavior of particles. Psychologists might call it confirmation bias or selective attention, but Jung recognized something more profound. The unconscious mind, when activated, can arrange external circumstances to mirror internal states. This is why the signs you receive are always perfectly tailored to your personal symbol system. If you grew up Christian, you may see crosses or receive Bible verses. If you studied astrology, planetary transits will align meaningfully. If you are connected to nature, animals will appear as messengers. The unconscious speaks your language because it is your unconscious. It is not a separate entity sending messages. It is the deeper layers of your own mind, finding ways to communicate with your conscious awareness through the only means available, the external world. But here is the crucial discernment required. Not every coincidence is meaningful. The ego, once it learns that synchronicity exists, begins manufacturing false signs to avoid the real work. You can waste years chasing symbols, interpreting every minor event as a cosmic message, using spiritual seeking as a form of procrastination. True synchronicity has a quality of numinosity, a sense of the sacred, an emotional charge that cannot be manufactured. It often comes unbidden when you are not looking for signs. It feels like recognition rather than discovery. The 72-hour window following a major awakening threshold is when synchronicities intensify to almost overwhelming levels. This is because your psychic boundaries are thin, you are in direct contact with the unconscious, and the membrane between inner and outer reality becomes permeable. During this time, pay attention to the first significant event, conversation, or opportunity that appears. This is not random. This is the unconscious confirming the direction, providing the next breadcrumb on the path. If you ignore it out of fear or skepticism, the opportunity will pass, and the next opening may take months or years to appear. The phone call you have been avoiding making, make it in this window. The person you have been thinking about reaching out to, contact them now. The project you have been planning but delaying, initiate it immediately. The unconscious has cleared the energetic path, but you must take the physical action. Synchronicity is a co-creative process. It requires both inner alignment and outer implementation. The universe meets you halfway, but only if you move. The burden of chosenness. Responsibility, not privilege. We must now confront the shadow side of the chosen one archetype itself, because this concept is vulnerable to ego inflation. When you identify as chosen, there is a risk of developing what Jung called psychic inflation, the ego mistaking itself for the self, believing it is special, superior, or exempt from human limitation. This is spiritual narcissism, and it is one of the most common pitfalls on the individuation path. The truth is more nuanced and far more demanding. You are not chosen because you are better. You are chosen because you are willing. Thousands, perhaps millions, received the same call you are receiving now, but most ignored it. They chose comfort over calling, numbed themselves with substances or distractions, or convinced themselves it was mental illness rather than spiritual emergence. You are reading these words because some part of you refused to fully shut down, despite the pain of staying awake in a sleeping world. But this willingness comes with a cost. The individuation journey is lonely, not because you are superior, but because you are on a different developmental timeline than those around you. Your old friends cannot relate to your experiences. Your family may pathologize your changes. Your society has no framework to understand what you are undergoing. This is why tribe is essential, finding others who are navigating the same terrain, who can reflect back your sanity when the world calls you crazy. Yet even within spiritual communities, there is hierarchy and competition. The ego infiltrates awakening circles, creating subtle rankings based on how many workshops you have attended, how much shadow work you have done, how advanced your psychic abilities are. This is the ego's last stand. It cannot prevent your transformation, so it attempts to turn transformation itself into an achievement, a new arena for the old patterns of comparison and inadequacy. True chosenness manifests not as superiority, but as service. When you complete the individuation journey, you do not transcend humanity. You become more fully human. You gain access to depths of compassion, creativity, and courage that were locked behind your defenses. And these qualities naturally radiate outward, affecting everyone you encounter. You heal not by trying to heal others, but by being healed yourself. You teach not through words, but through the way you move through the world, grounded, authentic, undefended, yet boundaried. The responsibility you carry is to stay awake when awakening is inconvenient, to keep your heart open when closing feels safer, to speak truth when silence is rewarded, to create beauty in a world that worships utility, to love without guarantee of reciprocation, to trust the process when evidence suggests you are delusional. This is the real burden of chosenness, and it is far heavier than the fantasy of spiritual privilege. The alchemical marriage, integrating the divine masculine and feminine, we return now to the vision of Michael and Jesus, because these figures represent the final integration Riku,